Hi there! In today's video, I'm going to create a ChatGPT API-powered chatbot that can answer questions from your PDF files. And I'm going to use the new ChatGPT Assistance API to do this. Now, previously I have created this version with PHP and HTMX, but this doesn't use the new ChatGPT Assistance API. I would also like to take this opportunity to learn some Python web development. So I'm going to create this new version with Flask. So let's get started. So let's start by creating an app.py file. And here we have to import Flask. I believe it's from Flask import Flask. And then we have to do something like app equals Flask, and then we pass in name. I'm not sure if this can be like any name I want to give the app, but I have seen usually this is done. So that's what I'm going to do. And next we have to add some routes. So we have to say something like app.route, and we add the slash route, which will be the entry point for our application. So let's define index, and let's just return hello world from this just to try it out. And then I believe it is something like app.run. And let's see if that will work. So now if we run Python, actually I'm going to add like a hashbang to this user bin env Python 3. And I'm going to chmod this thing plus x, and then I can just run app.py. And now we have a server running, and if I open this, we get hello world. So it works. Now, like I said, I already have this project that's made with PHP. So I'm going to copy the styles and everything from this one. So I am going to open that project from here, and let's copy our style from here, and let's create a folder called static. And in this, let's create a style.css and paste this here. And now I believe that this is automatically accessible. So maybe I have to restart the server, I'm not quite sure. But if I then go to /static/style.css, then here we have a style. So that's great. Now we have the style. Then we have to add the template for the index. So I believe there's some function called render template, and we give it the name of the file. So let's call it index.html. And I believe this is also automatic. So if we create a template folder, templates, and we create a file called index.html, and then we copy our index.html from here, and we paste it in here, then now this should open in the browser. So here we have just some basic HTML. We have a navigation menu for the sidebar, and then we have the main area, and we have some HTMX stuff here. And these, of course, post to this PHP file, so I will remove the PHP ending, and we will create these as separate routes in our application. And of course we have our HTMX library included here. So let me refresh this thing, and let's see if we have an internal server error. So let's see what is the issue. Render template is not defined, so I have to import it from here. Render template. And let's try to run this thing again. And let's refresh. And we are almost there. So we have to change this to /static/style.css. Now, I'm not sure if I have to refresh the server. I do have to restart the server. And if I then refresh, then now we have the styles and we have the basic layout of the application ready. Okay, so let's create the new chat endpoint. So this button posts to new chat. So let's create that. Let's say app route new chat, and let's define a function new chat, and this is going to return something. Let's render template new chat.html. Although what this actually does is it adds the button for the new chat here. So we should return from this endpoint the button for the new chat. So I'll actually call it a chat button. And let's check from our PHP version. We have a new chat here, and this will in fact echo out this button. So let's create a template for this button. So I am going to go to my Thready application, which I have named it. And let's create a new chat button.html. And let's paste it in here. And I believe that in Flask, you do something like this. You do these double curly braces, and then you pass in like a chat ID. And this one as well is going to be double curly braces and chat name. And I believe that this will be automatically HTML encoded, so we don't have to worry about XSS. And I'm going to change this to be /loadchat/chat ID. And then I think that we can pass it here. So we can say that chat ID is, let's put something here, and chat name is going to be untitled chat. And I'm going to make this look a bit nicer. Okay, and we have to also set methods is post, because we want to post to this endpoint, and in Flask you have to specifically say that you are allowed to post. So let's start this up again and let's refresh. And now if I click new chat, we get a new button, and if I click it again, I get another one. So now we can create these buttons. Amazing. So let's move on to the next endpoint. So we have to create this load chat endpoint. So let's do that. Let's say app.route load chat. And then we have to like pass in some variables here, some parameters. I'm not sure how to do this. Can I say like chat ID? I don't know. So I am going to ask ChatGPT, how do I get variables from the URL of a route in Flask? You can extract variables. Okay, so it's exactly like this. So that's great. So let's do that. And actually I can say that it's an integer, which is pretty cool. So I am in fact going to do that. I'll say this is an integer, although I might change it at some point. It might not be an integer. So I'm going to just say chat ID. So then I should be able to use that. So then if I define load chat, then was it just like that? I have to pass it here as well. So this is chat ID. And what this endpoint should do is it should list all the chats in this chat, or in the messages in this chat. So let's see how we did this in the PHP version. So we have load chat. And here we're using just JSON files to say the chats. So we have a chats folder with the chat ID in the name of a JSON file. And then in that we have all of the different messages. But basically we list here all the messages, and then we have the form. So let's copy this and translate this into Python. So let's create a new template called messages, or let's say messages.html. Paste it in here. Now it seems like form should be its own like template. I'm not sure how we can render multiple templates. And how do we make a loop in this template? Let's ask ChatGPT. How do I make a loop in a Flask template? You can use the Jinja 2 templating language. Okay. For item in items. Okay, so we put some percent signs here and then end for. All right. So let's do this. For message in messages, we are going to do, in fact, we have just the div here. And then for message in messages, we are going to print each message. So we are going to do this. Okay. And this is going to be the message content. And in fact, I have to say message.content. So I have to have the message as a dictionary. And this is going to be the role. So let's add the role here. Role. Message.role. Okay. So that should work. And we have to pass in a chat ID here as well. Chat ID. And let's again remove the PHP ending from here. And we have to do the end for. End for. Great. So then we have to pass in these messages here. So we have to render template, which will be messages.html. And we are going to say that the messages equals a list of some messages. Let's just add some messages here just to test. So we have a role message, role user, and content is going to be hello there. And then we are going to have an assistant message. Assistant, and I will say, how can I assist you today? So let's see if this will work. So I am going to refresh this thing, and let's refresh the page and click new chat and click untitled chat, and nothing happens. So we got an error. The view function for load chat did not return a valid response because I have to in fact return render template. So let's do this again and let's refresh. And if we click new chat, then now we have the messages here. So it works. What else do we have to do? Let's check what endpoints we have to create. So in our index, we have also a conversations, which is this list of conversations here. So let's create that endpoint as well. So let's say app.route conversations. And let's define the function conversations. And this will return render template. And this will be conversations.html. And let's pass in the conversations, which is going to be a list. Let's just add something here. So these will also be like dictionaries. We will have an ID, which is something, and we will have a name, or in fact a title that will be something, whatever. And let's just add a couple of these. And then we are going to create this conversations.html in the templates folder. So conversations.html. And what do we have here? Let's check again from our PHP version. We are just rendering some buttons. So let's copy this thing and let's put it in our conversations. And again, we have to do a for loop here. So we have to say for chat in chats. Maybe that makes sense. I call it conversations. And we have to do the ending, end for, and load chat, and we are going to do slash, and here we will have just chat.id, and this is going to be chat.title. Now I'm realizing that this is basically what we have in the chat button, but this is just for chat in conversations. So could we use the same thing here? Because it doesn't really make sense to have this HTML in many places. So we could we just, I don't know, can we render the same thing multiple times, or should we just pass to the other one an array? So we could pass in here to our chat button template, just chats equals a list of dictionaries. So we can have here ID as something, and we can have name or title, which is untitled chat. And this could be just a conversations. That doesn't really make sense. I don't really like this, but I also don't like to copy the code. So let's do that at first. So I can remove my chat button completely. So now we just use the same thing here. So let's refresh this thing and let's see what happens. If I refresh, then we have something, something, something here. And if we click new chat, it doesn't work anymore. And what is the reason for this? New chat. It renders conversations with ID and title. It should work. Did I write something wrong? Oh, I did not call it chats, I call it conversations. So now it should work. If we restart this and we click new chat, then it adds it here. Okay, great. So now it works. What is next? Let's check all of our templates. We have here load chat, and we have that endpoint. And here we have conversations, we have that endpoint, and new chat, we have that endpoint. So in messages, we have send message. So that is the final endpoint we have to create, at least for now. So let's create that. So in our app.py, let's add another one. Route, app.route, new message. And this will have methods, which is post. And let's define new message. And I am not quite sure how I get the request. Can I just get like request dot something? Or do I have to pass it here, request? Not sure. Let's ask ChatGPT. How do I get the post data from a request to a route. In Flask, you can access it with the request object. Okay, we have to import request. Okay, so it's just a global thing. So let's import request, and then we can just do this. We don't do this. We only say request dot something. Form. Okay, and this is a form. So we can say that. Let's check out our form. We have a chat ID, we have a file, and we have a message. So we can say that request dot chat ID. Chat ID equals request dot form chat ID. And we can also get the other ones, so the file and the message. And I guess this will fail if we don't have it, so we should check it somehow. Can we use like a get here, chat ID, and then have like a none here? I'm not sure. So let's first do this and see if we get a crash. And from this endpoint, we should return the message. So now we are going to have duplication because we have to render this thing now. But it's not that much of duplicate. It's not that much of HTML for the message. So let's return render template and let's render message.html. And let's create that message.html. And let's check from our PHP version that it is in fact like that. So, okay, so we actually return the user message, and this has a trigger on load to get the response. So this is how I did it. So the rendering of this message will trigger the loading of the response to this message. So let's copy this and let's put it in our message.html. And again, this is going to be just chat ID, and this is going to be the message. Okay, and then we're going to create a get response endpoint and slash chat ID. And in fact, this is a user message. So I'm going to call this user message. And then in our app.py, we call this user message as well. And we pass in the chat ID and the message. So let's say that the chat ID is going to be the chat ID, and the message is going to be the message. And we will handle the file later. And I will again do some formatting here. So now when we post a message, it should be added to the list. And then that will get the response from get response route. So let's actually add that as well. So this will be get response. And this will get also the chat ID, and this will only have a get method. And we have to put in here chat ID, and it is going to then render assistant message, and it will pass in the chat ID. So let's create assistant message. So I will again copy from here, get response. And here we have a bunch of code that reads from the file, but this is going to be much more easier when we are going to use the assistants API. So let's do this. Okay, we have some logic here as well. So we add this hx trigger to hx get create title if this is a new chat. So then we are going to create the title for this chat when we send the first message. But for now, let's just do this assistant message. So let's add that here. Let's do new file, assistant message.html, and paste this here and remove these echoes. And this is going to be, now this is going to be something that I have to pass in here. So I might as well call it just a message. And this is going to be, so this is the create title thing. So I am not going to do anything for now. Now we are just going to add some message in here. So in our app.py, we actually don't pass in the chat ID here because we only need it to fetch the response from ChatGPT, or to fetch the last message from the message history. And then we just render the message based on that. So we actually pass in a message, which now can be just, this is an answer from ChatGPT. So now we should basically have everything we need. We still need to create a title, and are there other endpoints here? No, that's the only one. So let's see how this works now. If we restart this thing and we refresh the page, we have these here. If we click new chat, we get a new chat, but we did not actually load it until we click it. And that is probably because we are, okay, since we use the conversations here now, then we don't have the hx get on load here, because previously we trigger on the loading of this new untitled chat button. When that loads, then we load this. So we have to create a separate one for that. So let's do that. Let's say chatbutton.html, and let's do what we did previously. So we have to have exactly this, but we have to also have an hx trigger here, which will be click and load. So we want to be able to click this and then load the chat, but also on the load of this button, we want to load the chat. So let's do that. And let's actually keep it as chat.id and chat.title. And then we can do here in our new chat, we are going to say that the chat equals this object, because I think it will be easier anyway in the end to do this, because we are going to create some sort of chat object that we will pass in directly. Although it might be an actual class, but let's do it like this for now. And let's see if it now works. If we refresh, we have these here. If we add a new chat, it doesn't work anymore. What did I do wrong now? I posted to the wrong place. So this should be the chat button. So now, finally, new chat. And it opens it and it adds it here. And if we say hello and we send it, enter doesn't actually work. I have to click here. No, that doesn't work either. So what went wrong now? We got a 404 error. So we have to do something. We have new message. It was called send message, not new message. So let's change it to send message and restart the application. And let's see. New chat. Hello. Enter. Nothing happens on enter. Send. Nothing happens on send. What happened? 400. We got an error. Why did we get 400? That is a bad request, right? 400. But we got no errors. So I think there's something like debug equals true that we can pass in here. And if we do this, then do we get some more information? Hello, enter. Okay, so exactly we get the key error file here because we don't have a file in the post. So let's see if we can do .get file, and none is the default. And let's actually try to do this. Oh, actually we detected a change. So we will automatically reload the server when we are in debug mode when we change something. So let's do hello. And now we get the message here. So we can actually use get. So we got the message, but we did not get the response. So we got a 404 because get response does not exist. And that is because I need to pass in the chat ID, which I do not have for some reason. So in user message, we add the chat ID here. But here we pass in the chat ID, which comes from the form. And in the form, the chat ID comes from chat ID, and we create the form here and we pass in the chat ID, but we don't pass the chat ID in here to this template. So I have to add here, chat ID is chat ID, and let's format this again. Okay, let's try again. We should have now detected a change, so we can restart, new chat, and hello. And now we got a message back. So now we can send messages. Amazing. So now we just have to integrate ChatGPT into this. Now I also want to remove this message from here. And in my PHP version, I did it like this. So I have here just a script that resets the message form. But actually what we can do which I did not know when I created that previous version, is we can add to our form an hx on submit. Sorry, maybe it's just one colon. And here we can have the message form dot reset, because we can't use just submit. If we do this, then the message form will be reset before we send the HTMX request. So we have to say hx on. So let's see if that works. So let's refresh and let's add a new chat. Let's say hello and let's send it. And it did not work for some reason. Maybe we need the double colon here. Let's restart this and say hello, and it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Let's check HTMX hx on. We have here submit somewhere, but I cannot find it now. But it is like this, hx on click. So the same thing should be hx on submit. Message form reset. But I'm not going to bother with this, because this seems like I'm going to be debugging for hours, and it is such a simple thing. Then I will just add it to my user message. Script message form reset. Fine, we are going to do it this way. Refresh, new chat, hello, and now it works. So that is fine for now. So how do we connect this to ChatGPT? Well, first of all, we should have some sort of thing where we can save the conversations and the messages. And since we are using Flask and we have this server here running, so I guess just as a quick, simple thing, we could just have like a list of messages as a global variable. And we could add the messages to that. And then later we can figure out how to save that in a database. So we could just have like a conversations. We actually have a function called conversations, so we have to do something else. So let's call this database, and let's make this a dictionary, and let's add here conversations, and let's make this an empty list to begin with. So now we have a list here. And then when we create a new chat, we should add that chat to the conversations. So let's say chat equals dictionary, which has exactly these attributes. So we are going to have, this way, we have an ID and we have a title. So the chat ID, we should like generate a chat ID. I think I used unique ID in my PHP version. So is there something like that in Python? Can I actually just create a UUID? Let's ask ChatGPT. How do I create a UUID in Python? We can use UUID4. Okay, so this actually used the code interpreter to do this, which is interesting. So we import UUID and then we say UUID UID4. Okay, so let's import UUID. And let's say that the chat ID is UUID.UUID4. Like that, right? Exactly. So then we just pass in the chat to this, and we have to add the chat into the database. So let's do database conversations append chat. That is a simple database. So that's great. And then in load chat, we get the chat ID. So we should get the chat ID from the conversations. Now, would be nice if we could just directly get it from there. So could this actually be a dictionary? And we should do this. We can say that the database conversations, and this is a chat ID, equals chat. So we should move this into chat ID, and we can say that chat ID is that, and then we can directly reference the conversation by the chat ID in the conversations dictionary. Now we're duplicating it here because it will be easy to get the ID from this. But we can refactor later to remove these duplications. So now that we save it this way, we can just get the conversation directly from here. We can say that the chat is that. And we can in fact add to the chat messages, which will be an empty list. So now we can take the messages from this. So these are the messages. And then we just pass them here. So we say messages equals messages. So now it comes from the database. And chat ID is chat ID, that's fine. Next, conversations. So this is going to be what? We have to have a list now. So how do we convert a dictionary into a list? Now we have this problem. So can we just say conversations, and we can say that conversations, sorry, I can't use conversations. Let's call chats. And let's say that chats is database conversations dot values. Can't I do this in Python? So then I will get all of the values from the dictionary. And the values are going to be exactly a list of the chats. So I can do that. Great, that is conversations done. And send message will just do exactly this. So it will get the chat ID and then it will send that to user message. Okay. And get response, this should connect then to ChatGPT. So let's see if we now save this and it is restarting and I am then going to refresh. Now we have nothing, but if I click new chat, I get a chat here. And if I refresh, it is still here. So we are saving it into this temporary database. Now, I believe we didn't actually load the chat, so something went wrong. We did not have this key in the conversations for some reason. Let's see why is that. So we have the database here, and we add to the conversations chat ID the chat. So then why do we not have database conversations chat ID messages? Interesting. Why is that? Key error, this one. Let's actually do something here like print database. And let's do the same thing here, print database. And let's see what is printed. So when we click here, then we are going to print, it's a UUID. Okay, it's a UUID object. So I want to just make it str. Or can I like pass in something to make it a string? I can do this, I guess. So I don't have to print this anymore. So, because of course, when we have this route load chat / chat ID, then the chat ID is going to be a string. But here we are saving it as a UUID object. So then we can't reference that the same way. But now it should work. So if we click new chat, then we load it here. And if we refresh, then we still have untitled chat here. And if we open it, we get this here. And if we now say hello, then we get the response back. And moreover, we should now have these messages saved. Although, did I save them or not? Let's refresh and let's open this. And I did not save them. So where should we save them? So we saved the conversations already, but we should add to the messages when we send a message. Exactly. So we have to copy this thing and put it here. And we have to say append. And then we append to this list the message, which will be a message, which I will create here. In fact, I have the message already like this. So how should I do this? I should add like a role user, and I should have a content, which is the message. Okay, let's just do that. And then I have to do the same thing when I get the response. So when I get the response, I am going to do this. And I am going to set this right now just this way. Of course, this has to come from ChatGPT. And I will actually just pass in the message to this. So then I have to update my assistant message to say that message.content. Okay, so now we should be saving the messages to the database. I mean, I guess it's a database. It's an in-memory database. So let's refresh. Let's create a new chat. Let's say hello. And what is this? Why is it like that? Let's refresh and let's open it. And okay, we saved it, but we saved the response as a user message as well. So this should be assistant. And what happened in this one? Okay, we pass in the message again, but user message also has to be message.content. So let's refresh, new chat, and let's say hello. And we get the messages. And if we refresh and we open untitled chat, then we have the messages here. And I can send something else too, and it will be added here, and we get the message back. And if I refresh and I open it, then we have them here. Great, now we have a database. Now we have to connect ChatGPT to this. So let's do it. Let's import OpenAI. And we have to create an assistant. Now, we don't really want to create a new assistant every time we open this application. So maybe we should create a different script that creates the assistant, and then we can have some sort of configuration file that has the ID of the assistant. But let's do it here for now. So the assistant is going to be OpenAI.beta. Now, I really wish that I had some autocompletion here, but for some reason VS Code is bad, so I'm going to reload the window. And that looks a bit better. So now if I say beta.assistants.create, we can create an assistant. And we have to give it the model. So let's say model equals GPT 3.5 Turbo. And we will use the 11.06 version, which has the assistants API. And we also need, well, that's actually all we need. We can add like instructions, which is the system message, and we can add the name if we want to see it in the control panel of OpenAI. So let's actually add a name. Let's call it Thready. So this is our assistant. Now we have created an assistant. Then we are going to have to create a thread. Now a thread is going to be a conversation. So in fact, we want to create the thread when we add a new conversation. So let's see how that will work. When we click new chat, we create a chat ID, and here we should create the thread. So let's say thread equals OpenAI.beta assistants threads. Sorry, it's just threads create. And what are we going to create? We are going to create just a thread. We don't have to do anything. We just create a thread, and let's save the thread to this chat. And actually we just need the thread ID. So let's add here thread ID, which will be thread.id. Okay, now that has been saved. So now we have the ID of the conversation in OpenAI database. And we have a reference to it in our database. Okay, what are we going to do next? We are going to load the messages. So how do we load the messages? Now, the messages are not going to be stored in our own database. They are going to be stored in ChatGPT. So we, in fact, will not save the messages here. We are going to say that the thread ID is going to be chat ID, thread ID, right? Yes. And then we are going to load the messages from that thread. So we are going to say messages equals OpenAI.beta.messages threads.messages.list. And we are going to list the messages for the thread ID of thread ID. And I believe we have to add nothing else. That is all we have to add. Well, the limit is going to be 20 by default. And I guess that is fine. But we have to change the order, because normally they are listed from latest to oldest. Wait, is that? Yes, exactly. So the last message will be the first. So we have to say that order is descending. So then we get the oldest message at the top and the last message in the bottom. So these are the messages. Now, what is this? This is a sync cursor page thread message. Okay, so what do we have in here? messages dot dict from ORM JSON iter pages get next page. How do we get the actual messages from this? It is actually data. Messages.data, and this is a list. And here we have index 0 dot, I forgot how this works. So let's go to the OpenAI documentation and let's search here for the assistants. And in fact, we have to go to API reference. And here we go to messages. And when we want to list messages, we are going to get this thing. So data is the array of messages. Okay. And they will then have an ID and some stuff and a role and a content. And then the content will be very difficult. It is going to be a list of dictionaries. Now, right now we are just using text. So we can just take directly the 0th key and then take the text.value. So we can do this. We can say that this is the actual list of the message objects that come from ChatGPT. So we can say for message in messages data 0, sorry, in fact, not data 0, just data. And we are going to, let's generate a different kind of list that is in the easier format. So in this format. So let's say that a message list is going to be a list. And we are going to do message list dot append, and we are going to append a role which is going to be the message dot role, because that is just a string. And the content is going to be message dot, and then we take the content and, I mean, I guess we could just take the content and then later parse it, but let's just, for simplicity, take from the content index 0 and then from there text and value. So index 0 and text and value. I think these are actually like objects in this new API or this new library. So we don't access them this way because they are not dictionaries, they are objects. So this should be the actual text. Now, why is it so difficult? The reason is that you can have different kind of messages now. You can have images in the content as well. So you can have multiple things. You can have a text and you can have an image in the content. So that's why it is very difficult now. But now this should convert the thread messages into this simpler form. And then we can pass in the messages here as the message list. Okay, what is next? Conversations. That should be just fine. That is the same. Because in conversations.html, we just get the chat ID and the chat title and we list them. That's fine. But when we send a message, then now we have to send a message to the ChatGPT API. So how do we do that? Well, we have the message here. We have to do OpenAI dot beta dot threads dot messages dot create. We have to create a message to the thread ID, which will be the thread ID of the chat. So how do we get that? We're actually not going to do this. We're not going to append to the messages anymore because we are loading them from ChatGPT every time, which is, I guess, not the best thing. You should just load it once. But for now, we are going to load it every time. And we are going to let the ChatGPT handle all of the message saving for us. So we want to get the thread ID. So let's call this the chat, which is that. And the thread ID is going to be the chat.thread, or it's actually like this, thread ID. And we have to add a role, which is going to be user. And we have to add a content, which is going to be request.form message. I believe this is how it goes. So the content is a string and the role is user. Great. So we actually don't have to do this. And we pass in here the message. Okay, so we have to do that. So let's just call this message.user or message user like this. So we don't have to do this 2 times, and message content. Okay, so this will create a new message into the thread, and we have to run the thread so that we create a response for this message. So let's do that. Now I guess we could do that in the get response. So let's actually do that. So here we just create the message. And then when we go to get response, we are going to do the following. We are going to say OpenAI dot beta dot threads dot runs, and we have to create a run, and we have to pass in the thread ID, which is again going to be this. So we get the chat by the chat ID, and thread ID is chat.thread ID. So what this runs.create does is it sends a message to the OpenAI API that, okay, we want to now run the conversation in this thread and get a response to the latest message based on the previous messages. And this will not return the new message. This will just return a run object, and then you have to wait for it to finish. So that's a bit more difficult to use than the regular API. But what else do we have to have? We have to pass in now the assistant ID. So we created that assistant up here. So let's just pass its ID here. So assistant ID equals assistant.id. And do we need something else? We can pass the model, but it will by default use the model of the assistant. So we don't have to do that. So that should be it. And let's say that the run equals this. And then what we need to do is we need to wait for the run to finish. Now this is the thing that I'm not quite sure what is the correct way of doing this, but I can't think of any other way than creating a while true loop. So an infinite loop in which we check the status of the run, because I don't know how else to get the information when it is done. So we are going to say run equals OpenAI.beta.threads.runs.retrieve. And we are going to retrieve the run.id. So run ID is run.id. So the ID of this one. And then we also pass in the thread ID. So let's do that. Thread ID is chat.threadID. And in fact, this was not .thread ID. This is going to be a dictionary. So it's going to be thread ID like this. And then we can check the status of this. So if run.status is in the following thing, there is like, I don't remember the statuses. So let's see. When we retrieve a run, we are going to have a status of, where is it? The run object. Okay, so this is the run object. Queued in progress requires action, canceling or cancelled or so on. So I guess we just check if it's queued in progress or canceling, or in fact, if it's one of the others, then we have gotten the response back. So if it is in queued, processing, what was it? I forgot already. In progress, and canceling. I'm just guessing. I'm not quite sure which ones I should check, but these seem like things that you have to wait for. So canceling. So if it is, in fact, not in one of these, then we are going to break. Then we assume that we have a response. Now, I guess I could check that if it is failed or completed or expired, then we hold it. But I don't want to get stuck in an infinite loop. So hopefully it will not stay in these statuses infinitely. So at least it will stop. Then of course we should handle all of the cases. But for right now, we are going to do this. So after this has finished, then we are going to have the new message from ChatGPT. So what we can do then is we can again list the messages, which I did up here. But now what we are going to do is we are going to only list one message. So we are going to say thread ID is again chat thread ID, and order is going to be ascending, which is in fact the default. So we might not have to pass it, but I guess we can be explicit, and we are going to limit it to 1 because we only want the latest response, which will be the ChatGPT response. So then we can say that the message is going to be the following. The role is going to be, well, it's assistant, I guess. Now, I guess it might be something else, but right now for this particular chatbot, it will never be anything else than assistant. So then the content is going to be messages 0, and again, we have to do it in a very complicated way. So in fact, it is messages.data 0 dot content dot, actually 0 again, dot text dot value. So this is the content. So now we should have the message back from ChatGPT. And we don't have to do this messages thing anymore. I'm not sure why I actually put it there. Maybe I just copied this part from it. But now it should actually work. I have done all of these different endpoints now. So let's see if we get something. And I will, just to be sure, I will restart this whole thing. And let's restart it. So now, if we create a new chat, it took a while to do it, so I guess it did something. And if we now say hello, then actually now this takes a while too, so we actually should remove the message in JavaScript. Because now it is, I guess, sending the message. But probably something failed because it is taking very long. So I have a key error user. So what did I do here? Message user. Message user. Sorry, this is message role, of course. So let's try this again. Let's restart it, or actually it restarted automatically. So let's refresh and click new chat and let's say hello. And we added it, and do we get a response back from ChatGPT? We get a response back, but is this what we wanted? Let's actually see. ChatGPT never responds with hello. So did I in fact do this order the wrong way? Should this be descending and the first one should be ascending? Maybe that is what I should do, and this should be ascending. So maybe we retrieved our own message back. So let's refresh and let's try this again. Let's say hello, and we are going to get a message back. So now it's actually working. And if we go to new chat, we get another chat. And if we here say something like, what is the distance from the Earth to the moon? Then we should get an answer back here. And we should then be able to go back to this chat, and it should load it from the OpenAI API. But actually the first one is the latest one. But if I click this one, then it will load it from the OpenAI API. Because we don't save these messages anywhere. They just come from ChatGPT API. So let's then implement the uploading of the files and then asking questions about them. So how do we read the uploaded files with Python? I have no idea. So let's go to our send message route. So it is going to be here. And we have the file. But what is the file? Is it a file name, or is it some file object, or what is it? Let's ask ChatGPT. So let's say, how do I process uploaded files with Python Flask from a form? Hopefully this is simple. Okay, set up your HTML form. Yes. Set up your Flask route to handle post request. Okay. And what else? Set up your Flask route. So if file not in request files, then no file part. Otherwise we get the file. Okay. And if the file name is nothing, then we don't have a file selected. Otherwise, the file name is secure file name. And we do file.save, always path join uploads. Okay. So it's secure file name like a function from Flask, or yes, it is a function provided by Flask. All right. But we actually call file.save. So I believe that the file is already a file. What is it actually? What is the file variable? It represents the actual file object. So is it like a file, like if I do file.open? Is that the same thing? So is it the same file as in with open file as file? No, it is not the same. So it is a Flask thing. It is a file storage object from Flask. Okay. So let's see. It told us to do this. So in fact, we have to get it from request.files. So let's do that. Let's not do this. Let's say if file in request.files, then we are going to upload it. So then file is going to be request.files and file. So this is the name of our file in our form. So here we have a form and it has a file input and the name is file. Okay. So this is now going to be the file object. And then we can check if the file name is empty. Okay. So let's do it just here. If file.filename is empty, or in fact I will do if it's not empty, then we will continue. And then what we will do is here it will save the file on the file system. But I'm not quite sure if we have to even do this, because we are going to send this file to the Assistance API. So I wonder if I can convert in memory the file into a format that we can pass to the Assistance API. Now if we can't, then I guess we can just save it temporarily somewhere. Although, is it already saved somewhere? So can we just add that? So can I get the file contents or a path to the file without saving it separately? So I want to just get the file temporarily and send it to OpenAI, and then I don't want to care about that. Okay, I can read it. So let's take a look at the Assistance API. So we have here messages, and in the messages, when we create one, we can attach file IDs to the message. And how we create the file ID is we have to use the files section, and we have to upload a file. And we have to provide the file, which is a file object, and we have to provide the purpose. So let's see what the file object is. It is a thing with an ID and bytes and created at. There was some way of creating this with the OpenAI API. So basically what we have to do is we have to say OpenAI.beta. Actually, it's not in the beta. It's just in files. That's actually it. File from path. But can I get a file from bytes? Let's try to do files.create. So this is going to take the file, which is a file types. So let's say file is something, and the purpose is going to be assistance. But how do we get the file? So we can do OpenAI.file from path, and then we can pass in a path to a file. But right now we don't have the path of a file. Let's see the full response from ChatGPT. Okay, Python's temp file module can be used to create temporary files. Okay, so we can do this. Okay, let us copy this code and let us import temp files. What was it called? Temp file. And then what we can do is we get the file, and if the file name is not empty, then we are going to, we did that already, we're going to say with temp file named temporary file delete false, which means what? Delete false is used to keep the file around after the with block ends. I don't want to do that. Is it by default true? Delete. Yes, it is by default true. So I will just do this. So I will create a temporary file, and I will save our file into the temporary file. And then I will put this inside of this with block. So then I am going to create this file from the tmp.name. So this will then be the uploaded file. And then we can attach the ID of this uploaded file to our message. So let's see what the file IDs is by default. So it's a list. So we can just do this. File IDs equals file IDs. And let's create it here. So first of all, file IDs will be an empty list. So if we don't have any files, then it will be an empty list. And when we get the uploaded file, we are going to say file IDs append uploaded file.id. So then we are going to have the ID of the uploaded file in this list, and we will pass it to our message. So that should work now. So we are going to now open the temporary file, and since we are using this with block here, the temporary file will be deleted after the with block. And we send the file to OpenAI. So of course, then it's not temporary anymore. It is saved in OpenAI database. So I am actually not sure if we have to do anything else. So let's restart it. Actually, it was reloaded already. So let's refresh this thing and create a new chat. And let's just say hello just to test it out. And we get a response back. If we then upload a file, I'm going to upload this 4hours.pdf that I have in my previous project. So I will select this, and I am going to say, who is the author of this book? And let's see if we in fact get an answer. Now I pressed enter already. It took a while to do this. And I got an error. I'm sorry, but I can't access the content of the file you uploaded. However, if you provide me with the title of the book, I can help you find the author. And the reason why this happened is that we have to give ChatGPT the ability to do this. So that ability is given somewhere. I believe it is in the assistant. So we have to say tools equals, and this is a list of tools that we give to ChatGPT, and we are going to give the type of tool which is retrieval. So now this thready assistant can actually retrieve files. So let's try this again. Refresh, new chat, hello, and let's upload a file, 4hours.pdf. Who is the author of this book? And we are going to get the answer, which is the author of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, is Timothy Ferriss. So now it works. And if I ask, when did the author become a millionaire? It should say 1997, if I remember correctly. And in fact, this is what we got back. So now we are chatting with our PDF file. And we did not have to implement any chunking of the file or anything like this. Everything is handled by OpenAI. And if I now refresh this page and I go back to the untitled chat, I still have everything here. So it in fact works. Now I realized that I think I made a mistake here. So I am loading the messages in this ascending mode. But I think that I should still use descending because there's a limit on this, which I guess is like 20. So this will only list 20 messages. But if I get them in ascending order, meaning from the first one to the last one, so from the earliest one to the latest one, then it will only retrieve the first messages and the last messages will be cut out. So I should say descending, and then I should reverse the list. So I guess I can I do prepend? Maybe that's not a thing. Can I pass in something else here? No. So I'm just going to say this. Message list equals reversed message list. So this should do the same thing. So if we now refresh and we click new chat and we say hello and we get the answer back and we say something else. What is 1 plus 1? 1 plus 1 is 2. And if I refresh and I go here, then I still have the messages, but now it should show like the last 20 messages. Of course, you can get them all, but then you have to do like pagination, which is a little bit out of the scope of today's video. But now, let's actually see if we can upload some other files. Because I have a feeling that the ChatGPT Assistance API can actually handle like Excel files or something like that. So first of all, let's send this falcon.py, which is a test of the Falcon 7db model I did a while back. So it's like a simple terminal chatbot made with the Falcon 7db model. So let's see if it knows what this file is. What is this file? And let's see, I am unable to access the file at the moment. Okay, why is that? Let's actually see if we get some errors. Now, it might be that there's some limitation on what kind of files you can upload. So let's actually try to do something else. Let's try the 4 hours again. So let's upload this one. And who is the author of this file? Sorry, this book. And does it still actually work? It does not work. What did I do? I didn't actually change anything. I changed only the message list. So what on earth is going on here? Let's actually take a look at the logs in OpenAI. So I will first of all give this a name of thready2, and it is going to be reloaded. And let's do this again. New chat, and let's upload a file. 4hours.pdf. Who is the author of this book? And let's see if we get the answer back. We get the answer back. So what is going on here? Let's create a new chat and let's upload falcon.py. What is this file about? That's interesting. Was there some temporary error in the OpenAI API? Because that is very common. Okay, the document seems to have a script or program written in Python. It includes imports of libraries such as transformers and torch, as well as the definition and usage of a text generation pipeline for an AI assistant. Okay, so it works, but it doesn't. What is going on? Let's try one more time. New chat. What if I say hello in the beginning, and then I upload some file? What is this file? I see that you've uploaded a file. How can I assist you? What is the uploaded file about? It appears that the file contains code for interacting with an AI assistant for generating code. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. It must have been some problem with the OpenAI API. So we'll have to see if we come across this problem again. And what I was going to do is I was going to go to the OpenAI console and I was going to go to assistants. And here we can see our assistants, which we are now creating every time we run this application. So we have a bunch of threadies here now. So we should fix this. But here we have our thready2, and if we open it, we can actually change the name and we can change the instructions. So the system message from here and the model and the tools, we can include a code interpreter as well. And we can upload files to this model as well. And can we see the logs? Actually, we can't. But I think somewhere we have it, or not. I'm not quite sure how we can access the logs. But here we can also check the files. So we should have our temporary files actually here. So these are the names of the temporary files, because this comes from Python, this temporary name. I'm not sure if that is a problem because we actually don't add the file extension here. Not sure if that is an issue. It might in fact be. But let's first fix this issue that we are always creating a new assistant. So let's create some sort of JSON file where we save some settings. So let's just do this. With open settings.json. And I guess we should get it from the current path. So let's include or import pathlib. And I think there's something like pathlib.path. So let's actually say import from pathlib import path. And then we can say path, and we can say here file. Or is it path? Like this. And I think we can actually use like a slash. I saw this in some OpenAI code. So this will actually be converted into the directory separator of the current platform. Because of course, you can't just directly put a slash here because then it won't work on Windows. But I guess this path class implements its own division or something. And then, is that how it works? because there's like division. We are dividing path by this. Let's see if it actually works. So we're going to open settings.json in read mode as F, or I don't know, settings, just F. And we are going to say that the settings is going to be json.loads, or I think we can just say load and pass in the F. And then we can import JSON. And we can also say that this is the settings file. So settings file is that, and if not OS path exists, and let's import OS. So if settings file does not exist, we're going to create it. Or should we say this? If the settings file exists, we are going to open it, and we are going to set the settings to whatever is in there. And otherwise, we are going to set the settings to some basic settings. So let's say that actually we don't have to have any settings. It is just an empty dictionary. And then we are going to, I guess, check if assistant ID in settings, we are going to, in fact, if it is not in settings, if we don't have assistant ID in the settings, then we are going to create the assistant, and we are going to set settings assistant ID to the assistant.id. And then we are going to save the settings. So let's do with open settings file in write mode as F. We are going to do f.write, or actually we are going to do json.dumps, or just dump. And we are going to dump the settings into the file. And then we are going to reference the assistant ID like this. So let's find where we use assistant. We use it here. So let's do that instead. And do we have it somewhere else? I think that is the only place. Yes. So now we might in fact add here some debugging, like let's do print info creating an assistant. So then we can see whether we are creating an assistant. So let's try to run this, but we actually get an error. Path is not defined. So is it in fact a file? Okay, we said creating assistant and not a directory error. Okay, so it added the whole thing here. So how do we get the current, is there a base? I've done this before, but I don't remember. What is the path? There's a path. Why don't we have a path? Path is not defined. Package. Let's ask ChatGPT. How do I get the path to the current folder, or the folder of the script file in Python? File attribute, okay. Dir name, okay. So we are going to do that. Oh, or we can do this. Oh, it's okay. Parent and absolute. I guess it doesn't have to be absolute. So we are just going to do file.parent, and then we're going to /settings. So let's run this thing, and we created an assistant. And if we take a look here, we have a settings.json with an assistant ID. Great. And if we run this now again, we are not creating an assistant. So now we have just the same assistant every time. Now, I guess we can do the same thing with our database. So we can have a JSON database. So we can do the same thing here. But we are going to say that the database file is going to be database.json. And then the database is going to be JSON load. Otherwise, the database is going to be this. And then we can just save it. So I guess we could create like a different module for the database and maybe for the settings. So let's do database.py. And what are we going to do here? Let's add a function, load. And what will this do? Well, it will do this. So we're going to say database is database.load. Well, we can't do that. We can't call it database anymore. I guess we could call it db. Is that going to conflict with something? Let's rename it as db.py. And we are going to import db. And we're going to say database load. And here we are going to do this. And we have to import from path lib import path. and we have to import OS. And we are just going to return this. And we have to import JSON. Now I guess it would be nice to like get the file name in here. So let's say db file. Let's add it here, db file. So then we can do that. So that looks a bit nicer. And I guess we can do the same thing with settings. So we'll say settings equals settings.load settings.json. And we can do this in there as well. So let's create file settings.py and let's do this thing here. And this is just return. And we have to import all of this stuff. And this is going to be settings. Let's just call it file name. This has to be load file name. And we can do this. I guess we can use the same name here. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so that looks a bit nicer now. But we have to import settings. And again, I can't call it settings. So I'm going to call it config. And that is pretty cool that the Python extension updated the name of this thing. But of course I want to use here settings. And then it screwed everything up. So it is actually not good. So I want to rename this to config, but I don't want to do these changes. And I will just import config, and this is config.load. All right. And I guess this should be inside the settings as well. So here. So we should do this here. And we can't return then. We have to say that settings is that. And we have to also, that's not really good because now we have OpenAI here as well. But let's do this anyway. Import OpenAI. So we load the settings from the file. And if we don't have the assistant ID, then we create the assistant. And then we save the settings. And we could do this and say config.save. I guess we can just say save here. And we can define save. And does it matter in Python the order? Can I call save above? Not sure. Maybe I cannot. I have a feeling that this is a proper language. And in proper languages, we don't allow you to call functions before they have been defined. So we are going to do this. But we need the settings file and the settings. But we pass it into this load function. So how should we do this? Should I create a class? If I create a class, I've never created a class in Python. Class settings or config. How does this work? Can I just define these functions in the class? And then how do I make a constructor? I'm not going to learn to make classes right now. I am just going to do the following. I'm just going to pass these here. Save the settings file with these settings. This is not a very good thing, but I am getting tired at the moment and I don't know how to do this properly. So we are going to pass in the settings file and the settings. And then we can do this in our app every time when we change something in the database. So actually, I was supposed to create this save function in the database, not in the config, but I guess I can do the same thing there. So let's add a save function in the database, which is going to take the db file and the database. And then what I can do now is I can remove the path lib import, and I can do this. When we use the database here, we are going to say db.save, and we pass in the database.json, and we pass in the database. Now, this is not a good way of doing this. Why am I doing this so badly now? Let's say that the database file is that, and then we can use this here, database file, and then we can do this every time when we modify the database. So we are going to do that somewhere else. Actually, is that the only place? So we add a new chat. That's right, because we don't save the messages in the database. So I'm not sure if I had to even do this database save function. Anyway, now the database should be saved. So if we run this again, now we are using this assistant. And if I refresh this application and I create a new chat, then we should have now a database.json and we have a conversation in here. And if I now refresh this, it is still here. And if I open it and I say hello, then for some reason we don't get a message back. And it is because non-type is not subscriptable. So we don't have settings now. Let's take a look at our app. We have settings, which is config.load. And probably I didn't return the settings exactly. So I have to return settings. And I'll do one more thing here. I am going to add to JSON dump indent is 4. So it will look nicer. Now I'll do it in both of these. Indent is 4. So now let's restart. Actually, it restarted again automatically. So let's refresh. And we still have this here. If we open it, we still have our message here. Because of what? Because we sent the message already there, but we didn't run it. So if we continue this, what is the capital city of France? The capital city of France is Paris. And if we refresh, we still have it here, and we still have the messages. And if we get a new chat, and we say, what is 1 plus 1? We still get a message back. And if I upload a file, 4hours.pdf, and I say, what companies were mentioned to have been born during a recession in the book? And again, I don't have access to the file for some reason. I'm not sure why that happens. Let's try this again. Let's create a new chat and take the same file again. 4 hours, and let's ask this. Maybe there is some sort of problem in the OpenAI API, because today and many days they have had some problems there. And now we got the answer back. And this is, in fact, the correct answer. Now this is interesting that it adds this weird source here. I'm not sure what this means. Is it on page 10 or what? Anyway, now it works and we are persisting this. And even if I close this and I start it again and I refresh, we still have these here. So that is very amazing. Now let me still delete this database and let's see if it still works after that. And actually I have to restart the server now so that it will load it again. Okay. So let's start a new chat and let's see if it can actually read Excel files. So let's find Excel file examples. Okay, I found some sort of XLSX file that has some information. So let's just see if it knows what this is. So if I upload this here, actually I have to save it. I just opened it from the zip file. So if I now open this and I'm going to upload it, what is this file about? Now I should really add the file name there because I think that is causing some issues. But let's see. Now we could actually enable code interpreter with this, but I don't think I'm going to do it in today's video. It might just work if I just enable the tool of code interpreter for it, but I think today's video is getting a bit too long already. So I'll do that in the future. But for some reason, this is taking very long. Let's check the error log. Aha. Okay, so these are all the formats that are allowed. Interesting. So they in fact have PHP and Py files here, and C and CPP. Okay. XLSX, wait a minute. Because I don't have the file extension. So let's do that finally. So how do I update it so that I can create a file with the name of the uploaded file? So let's do that. How do I create the temporary file with the original name, including the extension of the uploaded file? Okay, we can use the temp file again. And how do we do it? Can we just set the name of the temp file? Or okay, create a temporary directory, and then file name is secure file name, and file path is tempdir file. Okay, so we save it there. Okay, let's do that. So here, if we have the file, then we create the temporary directory. And then we are going to create a secure file name, and we are going to save the file there. And then we are going to upload it from that path. So we can do this. And I guess at some point, the temporary directory and the file are deleted. So I have to import secure file name and OS. So let's do that. Where was the secure file name? It was from there. Workzug. How should you pronounce that? So this one, and import OS. So now that should work. So let's try it again. Let's refresh and let's choose a file, which is this sample data. And what is this file about? And let's actually check the error logs right away. It says XLSX is allowed, but for some reason it doesn't work. So actually, file.filename, file path is that. Let's print saving to file path. What is the actual file path? So, or is that saved somewhere? Let's create a new chat just to be sure. And let's select XLSX. What is this file about? And where are we saving it now? We are saving it into temp sample data XLSX. Okay, for some reason it doesn't work, even though it is listed here. So let's just copy this, make a new one, and save as CSV. And actually I have a hurricanes.csv here that I could try. So let's call this sales.csv. I think it was something about sales. And let's upload that. Does it know what that is about? Sales.csv. What is this file about? And that one we can actually upload. Now, we should actually handle the errors, of course, and show it to the user. But this is a very bare minimum example. Okay, we are not getting a response. Okay, again, failed to index file, unsupported file, application CSV. Okay, so it can't read CSV files, but at least it can read PDF files. Maybe if we give it the code interpreter ability, then it can do it. Let's actually try it, and then I will finish this video. So it is in fact now in our config because we are doing it here. So let's add here retrieval, and let's add here code interpreter. Let's try to run this again and see what happens. So let's add the sales here, and let's say, what is this file about? Now, of course, we can't display like images that come from the code interpreter right now because those are in a different format. We can now only display text. So let's see. We actually got already failed to index file. So it does not work. But I hope that you found this video entertaining and helpful. And if you did, then click like on this video and leave me a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure to subscribe to my channel and you won't miss it when I post the next time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.